Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr. Speaker, that was an interesting speech, and it was a good speech for the evidence that it provided, and it will provide to the opposition. I said to my colleague Pete Hodgson, is this the first government on ECE since the Longy government, I think 86-87, professionalised, 87-88 professionalised the whole industry that has believed in cutting ECE? I think it is. And for that member to stand up, the member who I think failed to acknowledge or didn't know what H2O was or water, to stand up and bag ECE and stand up in this House and say that the government has not cut the funding is absurd. I challenge that member to answer this question. If the government has not cut the funding, why is the Swannanoa ECE, who's publicly stated they lose $100,000 per year, why have they lost that money? Why have that blind ideology? Well, here's another bit of blind ideology. That ECE happens to be 300 or 400 metres from the residence on Tram Road of the Minister of Labour, who came out and said that of the 34 ECEs, well, there's about 54, but the 34 that are going to receive a cut in funding, which equates to around $800 to $1 million a year, Ms Wilkinson came out and said, no, the Ministry of Education has said those 34 ECEs will only lose, so at least she acknowledged it was a cut, in total $29,500. Yet the ECE closest to where she lives, as that member has a giggle on a laptop or a BlackBerry, loses $100,000, three times, sir, what the member said the total amount would be. Redwood ECE loses around $70,000 to $75,000. Now, if it is not a cut in funding, can the member with the Cuisinart rods tell us why those two ECEs are losing a total of $174,000? Get out the abacus, borrow the Cuisinart rods from Jerry Brownlee, I'm sure he's still using them, and answer that simple question. Will the member answer me? Will the member answer me? Will the member answer the question? She won't answer the question. Because anybody with half a brain, I know that member may struggle, knows that if an ECE loses $100,000 in their budget, or $74,000 or $1, that is a cut. That is a cut. Now I want to talk about abandonment. And that member talked about aspiration. And I recall John Key a year or two ago talking about aspiration, how we need to aspire to greatness as a country, how we need to pick ourselves up, believe in ourselves, do better and upskill ourselves. And as we return to the great ECE debate, the National Party policy says that if an ECE like Swannanoa, 300 metres from where Kate Wilkinson lives, she's never visited there, I don't think, if they decide we are going to upskill, we are going to go for the aspiration, we are going to go for 100% qualified, which doesn't mean, because that member is a silly member, that parents will not take part in the education of their children. For goodness sake, of course they will. But because the ECEs say we're going to have 100% qualified, what signal does the National Party send about aspiration? They say if you're going to go for gold and 100%, we're going to cut your funding. And I say to that member, would she send or tolerate her children going to a secondary school, a university, a polytech, or a primary school in this country where the principal fronted up and said, only about 20% of the teachers that are teaching your child won't be qualified? Would that member tolerate that and get out her Cuisinart rods and say that she is qualified as a parent to teach a child algebra or mathematics or English or geography and prepare them for NCEA and all those things? I don't think a parent of the land would accept that. Maybe the Cuisinart rod expert at the back would, but I don't believe any parent, and I have talked to many parents who would not accept that. So we had the politics of aspiration. And what is the politics of aspiration from John Key 2 years down the track? $2.5 billion worth of tax breaks to the top 10%. 1,000 Kiwis a week leaving the country. Remember the election campaign when everybody was going to come home. Everybody was going to aspire to greatness, come home to New Zealand because John Key and the National Party were in office. Well, we know the immigration statistics. 1,000 people a week leaving the country. 158,000 people unemployed. What a great statistic of aspiration that is for that member over there as she has a wee giggle. $120 million being borrowed per week to fund a tax cut primarily for the top 10%. So I say to that member, show me something that is aspirational about those statistics. They come from the members' own government departments and agencies. And then we get on to the doozy, which is SOEs. And I want to say the person who has played the most ghost-like role in the whole SOE debate, the person who has been transparent, absent, AWOL, not in the debate at all, has been one SOE's Minister Simon Power. And what this reminds me is a replay. He's a smart guy. He's a smart guy because I tell you what, this guy doesn't want his fingerprints on anything that is negative, anything that the people don't like. He's got an eye to the future, my colleague Mr Hughes says. He has got a 3-year plan. Remember 3 strikes? 3 strikes. It was a justice bill. This member, invisible. No, you know, and that was reasonably popular with some in our community, especially David Garrett, of course. We know where he ended up. Well, he's back on the Act payroll, Trevor tells me. And now we've got the SOE debate. And if you go around the communities, people have worked it out. People say, hang on a minute, Mr English says generously that the National Party is going to be so benevolent that they're going to offer SOEs which the punters, the community already own. The Crown, that is the community, that is the Crown, purchased these SOEs over years, over generations with their taxes. Mr English is going to be very generous and benevolent and say to folks, ordinary Kiwis, men and women, you can use your own money to buy them back for a second time. Now, people ain't silly. And then you say to people, well, these ordinary mum and dad Kiwis that have got so much disposable income that when the energy companies go on the block, they will be rushing to the stock exchange with all the free money they've got, all the disposable income to shell out and buy shares. Where are these people? Are they members of the 158,000 people who are unemployed? Are they members of the people, those on the minimum wage who got a measly 25 cents an hour? They must have a heap of disposable income because there are going to be hundreds of thousands of mum and dad, ordinary Kiwis, flocking to the stock exchange to use the discretionary money they're awash with to buy these shares. That is a fantasy. That is an utter fantasy. We know that the only people who can afford to buy a share in the SOEs, which of course they already own as taxpayers, are the top 10%, the $1,000 a week people that Mr Key and the National Party cut into the deal of the tax cuts. They'll be there, of course, and the big institutions and the foreign owners. So people aren't sucked in by that. You know, mum and dad Kiwis can get a slice of it. I say to those members, they already own it, and they don't have the disposable money to buy it back for a second time. And then we come to the other interesting issue, which is, in respect of SOEs, is it a logical thing to do to sell them off? And people say, didn't the National Party try that last time? And they did, and they told everybody in New Zealand that if they sold those assets, everybody would be better off. And we know the truth in the 90s. People were not worse off, and we lost more and more of the family silver. And we know through precedent who will buy those assets. We know they will fall into foreign hands. And we know that any dividend stream, even if it is only 49%, will not go back into the Crown coffers to pay for education, to reinstate the ECE cuts, to reinstate the adult and childhood education cuts, the health cuts and all the other cuts that these members in government have put in place. That will be lost, and it will be lost offshore. So I say to members, people aren't silly. I say to Simon Power, he is a smart guy. He has kept his fingerprints absolutely away from this. He has not put out one press statement as SOE's minister. He has left it to Bill English and John Key. He has been utterly 100% invisible, and you have to ask why. Same on 3 strikes, didn't want a bar of it, knew it was wrong, kept away from it. Why? He does have a 3-year plan. He can say, hey, wasn't me. When the people roll up and say, we do not want this, it was tried before and it failed. So I say to the National Party, where is the aspiration for the 158,000 people on the dole as we speak? For 1 in 4 young people on the scrap heap, as Phil Goff said, straight on the dole queue. Where's the aspiration for that? And I say to Paula Bennett, who loves kicking the old beneficiary around, the headline on the Waikato Times that featured on the news tonight is true. Where are the jobs? Where's the job summit? Where's the 40 job? Well, I think it is 40, isn't it, that was created from the cycleway. Where is the plan? You can boot the old beneficiary around, tell them they're bludgers, tell them to get off their backside and get a job. But there's one problem, I say to Paula Bennett. If there are no jobs, that presents a terminal obstacle to them. I say there is no aspiration in this, there is no plan, and I say that John Key has abandoned ordinary New Zealanders.
Paul Quinn.
Is it, Jenny?
Thank you.